Welcome into Locked On Phillies. The drought is over. The Philadelphia Phillies, after 11 years, are finally back in the playoffs. We'll talk about everything that got them there and what's to come in today's Locked On Phillies.
You are Locked On Phillies, your daily Philadelphia Phillies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Drinking champagne right now. Sorry about that. Yes, this is Locked On Phillies. I'm your host, Connor Thomas. Been talking Phillies baseball for years. Just for what feels like ever, without seeing a playoff berth for this team. I want to thank you for making Locked On Phillies your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. It's been 11 years. It's been since 2011 that the Philadelphia Phillies have been able to say that they are a playoff baseball team. But that ended last night. Oh, man, what a night it was. It wasn't easy. And, man, if you haven't seen my reaction video yet, go ahead and check out my Twitter at ConnorThomas975. Pop champagne in the shower with the goggles on, freaking out, yelling, screaming, because it was an amazing way to do it. It was an amazing way for the Phillies to clinch. Now, you remember from yesterday's episode, we talked about the magic number being 1, and that meaning there were a couple options for the Phillies to get in. Either they could beat the Houston Astros, or the Milwaukee Brewers could lose to the Arizona Diamondbacks. And with the Phillies being in Houston, their game started a little bit later than the Milwaukee Brewers Arizona Diamondbacks game. So while we're watching the Philadelphia Phillies and everything going on there, we were keeping an eye on the Brewers and the Diamondbacks. Now, the first thing we noticed in between the two games last night, Aaron Nola looked incredible from the jump. He looked really, really good, like untouchable good, like something special was going on and probably shouldn't have talked about it on the TV broadcast. Listen, I know a lot of people think it's dumb about the unwritten rules and the jinxes and everything. If a guy's throwing a perfect game, don't throw up a graphic that says this is his longest perfect performance so far. Don't put up a perfect game watch graphic over the scoreboard. Don't talk about it during the broadcast and say, wow, he's perfect to this point. Oh, he's perfect. Just don't. We all know what's going on. I was sitting here in my living room. I had some family over. I wouldn't say it, but I was like, yo, you guys might not be able to leave because if he continues to do what he's doing right now, you guys are going to have to stay. And even I wouldn't say it because I believe in that, and I've been in that situation, throwing not a perfect game, but I've taken, back in my college days, I took a no-hitter into the 8th inning of a baseball game before. And listen, I wasn't talking to anybody or saying anything. I was sitting on the bench, my jacket on, sitting there, head down, just hanging out. Because you let the gravity of the situation take over you. It's not the same thing remotely as what Aaron Nola was doing last night, but just saying as someone who's been in that position at a competitive level of baseball. Yeah, man, I don't totally believe in those jinxes, but I wouldn't mess with it. I wouldn't take the chances. Either way, it doesn't take away from how great Aaron Nola was. Aaron Nola, perfect through 6+ innings, gave it up in the 7th inning. So, unfortunately, no perfect game and no hitter for Aaron Nola, but he was absolutely incredible. And he did not give up a run to the Houston Astros, who are the best team in the American League. Meanwhile, the Philadelphia Phillies offense, well, it was quiet, but you kind of got a feeling of how the night was going to go right from the jump. The start of games like that, where there's so much pressure and there's so much at stake, and you're like, we just need one more. And trust me, they weren't worried about the Milwaukee Brewers. The Philadelphia Phillies weren't. We absolutely were as fans, but they're focused on how do we beat the Astros tonight so we can get ourselves. Screw what the Brewers are doing. We're not waiting for them to let us get in. Well, when Kyle Schwarber steps to the plate against Lance McCullers in the first inning, and the very first pitch of the ball game is turned around for a solo shot to start it off, yeah, you felt like that was the night. You felt like, okay, this team is going to do it. And then it was quiet for 5 innings in between that, where it was zeros on either side and dominant performances both by Lance McCullers and more so by Aaron Nola, who again was incredible. And the Phillies offense was quiet, and there wasn't really a hard hit ball to speak of. A couple base runners here and there for the Phillies, but not all that much of a scoring threat. And then after Aaron Nola gets taken out, well, Jose Alvarado comes in. And Jose Alvarado, who's been the best reliever on this team since he got sent down to AAA and called back up, and one of the best relievers in baseball this year, absolutely shoved and worked out of a jam in the 7th. And then in the top of the 8th, well, you know what happens? Kyle Schwarber follows up a Bryson Stott home run with another one of his own home runs. So Stott gets us started with a bomb to right field that barely sneaks out. And then Kyle Schwarber follows that up, a back-to-back home run, 9-hole, 1-hole, leadoff guy, hitting one absolute moonshot upper tank at Minute Maid Park. And it's 3-0. And the Philadelphia Phillies have a little bit of breathing room. Meanwhile, Milwaukee, the Brewers were up, or they weren't up, sorry. The Diamondbacks were up 4-1 heading into the 9th inning. 4-1, 3-run lead, and they choke it away. And they go to extras. And just like that, you're looking at it like, oh, wow, well, the Phillies are going to have to do it themselves. They're doing it themselves. The Diamondbacks score in the top of the 10th. The Brewers walk it off in the bottom of the 10th. And just like that, well, it's up to the Phillies, but they have a 3-0 lead, and they're heading into the top of the 9th. And, oh, my goodness, just handle business. Guess who comes in for the save in the bottom of the 9th? Zachary Eflin. Eflin, who was supposed to be the guy to take a big step this year, who was supposed to be the guy to cement himself as a great 4 or 5 starter, who was a guy that this rotation was going to rely on big time, and then gets hurt. And he has the knee issues and the nagging injuries, and he's never around when this team needs him. And when he is around, he chokes it because he's hurt. He's not playing up to his standard, and probably his last year with the team because of contract situation, and he's ready to get paid, and some team's going to throw money at him. And he's in the bullpen now, and he's come up, and he hasn't really done all that much since he's come up because he's got limited opportunities. And what does he do? But he gets the ball in the 9th inning, and he gets the Houston Astros to go down without giving up a run. And the Philadelphia Phillies, on a short fly ball to center field and Brandon Marsh, are back in the Major League Baseball playoffs for the first time since 2011. That's how it happened, and the guys to thank for it, well, it's everybody. It's this whole team. Just think about the guys. Think about guys that aren't here anymore, and we're going to talk about that in the next segment. All the things that have gone on in between now and then, both on the field and off the field, but even just this year, the Didi Gregoriuses, the Brad Hands and Corey Knables, who are hurt right now, the guys that you traded, the Mickey Moniacs that get moved, that don't get a chance to see it. It's just like, and then all the other fringe guys, Nick Maton, Roman Quinn, guys like that you just don't really see. Garrett Stubbs, who was big at points this year. Matt Vierling, who turned into a folk hero. Brandon Marsh, who didn't hit in Los Angeles and came here and has torn the cover off the ball so far by his standards. Kyle Schwarber, the biggest offseason acquisition for this team this year easily. Nick Castellanos in points. Rhys Hoskins stepping up and getting really hot. JT Realmuto having the best season of the catcher maybe ever. One of the best. Bryce Harper doing it where he can to start off the year and fighting back from injury to hopefully get himself in a position where he can contribute in the playoffs. Alec Boehm fighting against adversity. Bryson Stott coming up and being the first Phillies first-round pick to make his debut on opening day ever in franchise history. Gene Segura fighting through an injury, a break on his hand, and ending the longest playoff drought for an individual player in the major leagues. Just everything these guys have done. The bullpen. Jose Alvarado fighting through. Sir Anthony Dominguez coming back from injury. Guys fighting through adversity. David Robertson coming back after injury. Hurt him this first time around here in Philadelphia. And Joe Girardi making way for Rob Thompson. Not really making way of his own accord, but Rob Thompson coming in and doing what he did for this team and turning them around and becoming a managerial hero for what he's done. One of the best in baseball this year in his shortened time with this team. Just so many people that were so, so good. Dave Dombrowski, great at the trade deadline. It was just John Middleton, great with the paychecks and allowing Dombrowski to go into the luxury tax. A lot goes into a team making the playoffs for the first time in a decade plus, and you saw it last night. But it's official. The drought is over. They are in. Man, it feels so good to say. So celebrate, Philadelphia. We have a couple of days to celebrate. We will talk coming up about the upcoming series with the assumed St. Louis Cardinals, unless the Phillies track down the Padres, which I doubt. And we'll discuss that in the coming days. But next, I want to talk about all the things that have happened since October, 6th, 2011, when that game ended, October 7th, 2011, when that game ended 1-0 against the St. Louis Cardinals. 10 things. Man, poetic justice it would be to win the wild card series against them if they get in for the first time in 11 years. But everything in between will be discussed next, coming up on Locked On Phillies. All right, let me tell you about our friends over at BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for football betting info this season. You can find all of the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth articles and analysis on every game you can find. As always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all of your sport wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. Listen, maybe you weren't a Phillies fan last night. Well, I know all of you listening to this are, but imagine a situation where it's two other teams playing. How do you make it that exciting? Well, for me, I had a little bit of added skin in the game because I had the over on Phillies 86.5 wins this season. Last night, well, they hit 87, and I cashed out some money. And I did some research on BetOnline before the season to make sure I had all the information I needed. It's the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to BetOnline for more, or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. That's betonline.com or .net you want to head to. BetOnline, it's where the game starts. Let's talk about the year 2011. Yes, 11 years ago. Yesterday was my birthday. So 11 years from October 3rd, 2011. Well, I'll tell you where I was at. I had just turned 17 years old. I turned 28 yesterday. I didn't have my driver's license yet. I couldn't legally drink yet. I was in high school going into my senior year at the very start of it. I hadn't decided what college I wanted to go to yet. I hadn't known I was going to play college baseball or where I was going to play college baseball. Didn't know what I was going to study. You think about the people you've met, the friendships you've created, the life changes that have made. From there, I've graduated high school, moved to Maryland, lived in England for a little bit, moved back. So did a study abroad in England, back to Maryland, back up here to Philadelphia, back to Jersey where I'm from, back to Philadelphia, all over the city. I've lived in different places in the city, all the different roommates I've had and people I've met. And that's me going from 17 to 28. Imagine if you were 20 in 2011 when the Phillies last made it in. You're 31 now. You could have a family. You'd be married. Could have met somebody, married them, had kids with them, and raised those kids to an age where they might have been watching the game with you last night, all in the span of time that the Philadelphia Phillies were out of the playoffs. It's absolutely incredible. Just take a second for me and think about what you were doing back on October 3rd, 2011. A long, long time ago. Maybe some things can jog your memory. So let's go through a couple things that were going on back in 2011, the last time the Philadelphia Phillies were in the playoffs. Number one song on the Billboard Hot 100, Moves Like Jagger by Maroon 5. Yeah, that song. The one that's forever old, that basically ruled all of that winter and the next summer and took on everything. I remember listening to it in my car on the way to school when I did eventually get my license a couple months later. Yeah, that was the number one song. You remember that annoying song Friday by Rebecca Black? If you're about my age, that took over your senior year of high school or high school. They played it everywhere. I had a science teacher for my AP Chem class that would play that every Friday on the smart board. Remember smart boards? They had to use the marker to hit the different dots. Those were big back in 2011. That song had come out in 2011. Snapchat had just been released. I'm too old for Snapchat now at 28. Everyone's yeah, we're all too old for Snapchat. It had just been released, and we were seniors in high school if you were my age. So hadn't even sent your first snap yet. Now that has gone through a whole trend of being popular to now being a younger kids thing, all the filters and everything. That all has been developed in the time that the Philadelphia Phillies have been out of the playoffs. I'm trying to think about other big things that had happened. Barack Obama was in his first term. He was elected in 2008, so 9, 10, 11 would have been the third year of his first term as president of the United States. Think about where we've gone since then. It's just been such a long time. A second term, a different president, another different president. All of this in between when the Phillies were in and when the Phillies got back in last night. Absolutely incredible. There's some other things. You think about the Philadelphia sports landscape and the guys who were playing sports around the city. Yarmir Yager and Scott Hartnell were still wearing Flyers jerseys. Andre Iguodala, Lou Williams, Thad Young, they were all young players. Thad young player. But they were young guys on the Philadelphia 76ers. Pre-process, pre-teardown of the process, pre-everything. And they're still in the league. Veterans now spread across the league, some with championships. Drew Holiday with a championship. Andre Iguodala with multiple out there with Golden State. And they were just young players on a Sixers team that wasn't all that good. The Eagles, Michael Vick, Deshaun Jackson, LaShawn McCoy, all pre-Chip Kelly. Andy Reid was still here. He's going on to win a Super Bowl in Kansas City and create another dynasty over there. Like, you think about the things that have changed in the sports landscape of this city. It's absolutely crazy. And, of course, that 2011 team, we know Jimmy, Chase, Ryan Howard, Roy Halladay, Cliff Lee, Cole Hamels, all of those guys are just incredible, the names that have existed. And then you look at, another thing, Drake. Are you a big Drake fan? Because he's coming to become an international superstar. One of the most famous people on the planet. Probably, you could argue, the most famous musician on the planet right now is Drake. Yeah, he hadn't dropped Take Care yet. Take Care came out in November of 2011. You know the term YOLO? That's now like cringy to say because it's so old and so worn out. And it was like 6-7 years ago. Yeah, that phrase hadn't been dropped yet. Because that's from the song The Motto that was on Take Care. Now, the single was probably out by this point, but still, that was fresh. That was cool. That had just been come up with. That had just broken into the mainstream dialogue. Now, it's gone from that to you can't say it because it's lame to no one says it anymore to it's a forgotten thing. It's crazy the stuff that we went through. And some of the players the Philadelphia Phillies had in between now and then. Cameron Rupp, Darren Ruff, Tommy Joseph, Andrew Knapp, Tommy Hunter, Sean Rodriguez. You're looking through all of these guys, Dominic Brown, John Mayberry Jr., the names that pop up, Peter Borges, Jeremy Hellickson, names that are long forgotten to some Phillies fans. And when they come up, be like, did that guy really play for this team? And I could go on and on and on, listing the inconsequential players that existed between 2011 and October 3rd, 2022. It reminds you how long it's been. At the time last night of it ending, with the Mariners already clinched, it was the longest playoff drought in Major League Baseball history. Or not history, Major League Baseball currently, the longest active drought. Gene Segura had played over 1,000 baseball games without making it in. JT Realmuto had played over 1,000 baseball games without making it in. It's just, and Rhys Hoskins had played over 600. Like Aaron Nola had played a bunch. It had been just over 4,000 days since the Philadelphia Phillies had been in the playoffs. Just over 4,000 days. And they're back in. They're absolutely back in. You can't take it away from them. And now, they have a chance to do something special. Even if they don't, they've accomplished what they set out to accomplish this year. They made it in. They proved to themselves and to this fan base and to this front office that this is a playoff caliber baseball team. Now let's see how playoff caliber they are. What tier they're in of the playoff teams. And then from there, we decide how you build sustainable success. But man, first goal of the season, absolutely accomplished. And what a road to get there. We'll have plenty more reaction and looking back on it and talking about the great things that have happened so far this year as we continue to get ready for the wild card series that will start Friday. So what's going to happen is the Phillies will play tonight. They will play Wednesday. They will have a Thursday off day, and the NL wild card series will start on Friday. Don't know what time slot yet for the Phillies. Keep you updated on all of that. Coming up next, though, as we wrap up, we're going to have a short segment where I tell you about what it's like to follow Locked On Phillies into the playoffs and some special things that we'll be doing for you as we get ready for that. That coming up next as we wrap up today's very celebratory Locked On Phillies. Okay, so here's how it's going to work with the playoff coverage. Now, I'm trying to set up with the guys over on Locked On Cardinals a crossover to preview the series. I'm sure we'll be able to get that done to get everything all squared away and talk about what's going on with St. Louis because they're a very interesting team too. It's kind of been overshadowed by Albert Pujols' race for 700, and also because they've had their division locked up because of the Brewers having a rough time down the stretch, and we saw that again last night. How that team just couldn't get out of their own way until the ninth inning, and found a way to win in the 10th. But the Cardinals have had the NL Central locked up for a while. The storyline has been more Albert Pujols than anything else, but they do have two MVP candidates still in Nolan Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt, and they got some good pitchers. They have some great stories there too with Yadier Molina and Adam Wainwright and Albert Pujols, all in the twilights of their careers, some legends for their organization. So trust me, there's a lot of emotion on that side too to make this run special. We'll break all that down. And what we're going to do after games, not only will I have Locked On Nows for every postseason game, regardless if it's the weekend or not. Normally we do Sunday through Thursday. We'll have it for every single postseason game, so Friday, Saturday, and Sunday if necessary for the third game of this series, and then any series going forward. But we'll also be doing, in addition to the immediate now, the short 1-minute video, we'll be doing a 10-minute post-game trash talk crossover kind of little shortened show that I'll be posting on socials, be posting on YouTube, getting that all squared away with the guys over on Locked On Cardinals. So an immediate reaction podcast, kind of shortened podcast, short little 10-minute thing to get you satiated about the initial results of the game. Now, it'll be fun if the Phillies win. It won't be as fun if the Phillies lose, but at least you can see me talk some trash and try and justify anything if the Phillies fall to the Cardinals in one of these games or multiple of these games. But that'll be your immediate reaction. You'll have the crossover before the series. And then once the series is over, depending on how it works out, we may do a crossover to recap the series. Or if I'm really upset, we'll have our wrap up for the regular season. We'll continue doing episodes after the season is over, but long way to go still. The Phillies, you heard Rob Thompson say it, 13 more games, 13 more wins, and you're world champions. And hey, stranger things have happened. You just got to get in. And the Philadelphia Phillies, well, they punched their ticket last night. We'll continue to discuss this throughout the week as we head towards, for the first time in 11 years, and the first time in my time here on Locked On Phillies, if you're keeping score at home, that's 1 year hosting Locked On Phillies, 1 playoff berth. I'm not saying it's me, but I'm not saying it isn't either. We'll continue to review everything, preview everything, just celebrate over the next couple of days because it's a great time to be a Philadelphia Phillies fan. I want to thank you, as always, for making Locked On Phillies your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast. Now check on Locked On MLB. Paul Francis Sully, he'll be covering everything. I'm sure we'll have a lot of Phillies-related stuff on his latest episodes. Check out Locked On MLB, where he's covering the entirety of Major League Baseball, all the big storylines. Paul Francis Sullivan, does a great job. You can find it wherever you get your podcasts, on YouTube and the Odyssey app. So check out his work there. And that's all my time for today. Go celebrate. Continue your celebration. Tonight's game doesn't matter. Tomorrow night's game doesn't matter. We're not worried about chasing down the Padres. Just enjoy the win and the playoff berth. That's all. And I will talk to you tomorrow. Hopefully a little bit less tired from the celebration that night on the next Locked On Phillies.